and welcome to It's About Youth with me, Fei Kwan. This year marks 30 years since the United Nations World Programme of Action for Youth, the first global plan to put youth at the centre of policy making. Now, it also comes as the UN turns 80 and for the first time held its first ever General Assembly high-level meeting on youth. And with half the world aged under 30, young people aren't just inheriting the future, they are shaping it now. So today on the show, we'll be asking how far have we come, what still needs to change, and what more do youth want to see? Joining me on the show to speak a little bit more about this is Allyzsa Zahril, a member with UNICEF's Young Persons Advisory Group, as well as Aliff, Naif Fizam, CEO of Peace Foundation. Welcome both of you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, firstly, 30 years since the UN has laid out its blueprint for youth engagement. I'm curious, from your perspective, the both of you, in the context of Malaysia, where do you see what kind of tangible progress has been made in recent years, and where do you think young people still struggle to be prioritized? Aliff, shall we start with you?
The thing that I want to focus on is on education. I think since 1995, when the first time WPAY was tabled, our literacy rate, access to education had increased. However, when it comes to deepening equality, we do have some shortcomings there. I would say most of the youth now are able to get a basic education. Especially, we do have some, we do put a lot more efforts when it comes to this. I mean, previously during the last parliament sitting, we can see how the education bills had been reformed to ensure that even secondary schools are wajib for the students to be part of. And I think, yeah, we do have some progress since 1995, but there is a lot, way more to go.
So we've got primary school, secondary school, now it's perhaps early childhood education that needs to be mandated. How about you, Allyzsa? Since starting your work in youth advocacy, what progress do you think there's been in youth involvement and youth engagement, and what gaps do you think still remain in youth representation?
Observing the youth, observing the fact that I'm in the UNICEF Young Persons Advisory Group, right? So it's a platform that give me the opportunities, that give my peers the opportunities to share our views, our perspectives on what do we think about certain things that had been incorporating or have not been incorporating about us. What I can see from now is like the progress that have been done since like last 10 years. I could see that youth participation is increasing, but it's not enough. And also, I feel like youth are no longer waiting. Like, we are no longer waiting for the adults to help us. We are actually driving the change ourselves. And we can see, for example, a lot of youth movements in Malaysia and also globally, right? So I feel like it's a very good start. And although there's still a lot of gray areas that's not covered, but I think this this movement and also this improvement is incredibly needed because we too have the right, we too have the voice that that matters, and I feel like it's important that that the adults also take into priorities what our needs are, because at the end of the day, we are the one that are experiencing all of this. So
yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, absolutely right to say that, because youth really are at the center of whether it's conflict, inequality in education, and most recently, I think a lot of talk on climate change. And all of this is really hitting young people hard. What do you see as, I suppose, the biggest blind spot in how governments are currently addressing youth needs, or what barriers do you think prevent young people from having their voices heard?
I think it's firstly the fact that tokenism still exists in terms of incorporating youth voices. Maybe like we are on the table, but we are not, our voices are not inputted enough. For example, in like consultations, we are just there for the fact that, oh, we are the youth, we are representing the youth. But
taking off a checkbox. Yeah,
but then by the end of the day, inside the consultations documents, the points that we inputted are not even there. So it's one fact about tokenism, and also the fact that the area of like marginalized communities, like children from marginalized communities, are not being voiced out enough. For example, like orang asli children and people from the north, people from inside Sabah and Sarawak. These youth actually experience a lot more than what we've seen in the media nowadays. So the fact that youth that is representing the marginalized communities have not been heard enough. So I feel like the most important thing is for us to actually step up our game in terms of incorporating every children in marginalized communities. Children with disabilities is also needed because they're often been side-cornered. So I feel like, those are the barriers that I observe nowadays.
Yep, definitely important to hit out of that Klang Valley bubble and to make sure that no one is left behind in this conversation. Aliff, what about you? What do you think? What sort of structural barriers are stopping young people, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, from actively participating and having their voices heard?
First, I agree with Allyzsa here when she said that the youth are sometimes being taken for granted, being just put as tokenism. I think we do need a new approach when it comes to youth participation. There is co-creation. For example, when it comes to planning a certain bills, drafting a certain bills, or drafting even the national budget, the upcoming national budget. I think round table should not just be a place where youth voice out their concerns, but also be a place where youth can actually draft the budget, the bills together. And I think one of the blind spot that people usually miss is about the precarity of youth work. So youth make up this large group called precariats. So it's a portmanteau between proletariat and also precarious, because youth, they do have jobs, they are employed, but sometimes they are underemployed, or their jobs are insecure, they don't have stability, they don't have social security or even job security. So yes, we can see youth are being employed in various sectors, but I mean, are their jobs stable enough? Is it secure enough? So as I mentioned, precariat or precarity is a new form of a new class, a new form of insecurities, not just or a new form of inequality, in fact. Because I mean, before this, most jobs try to lure youth with a lot of benefits, even the jobs in government sectors. But these days, even jobs in the government sectors are not secured enough. We see contracted doctors, for example. You know, medical sector has always been a dream for the youth. But these days, even becoming a doctor doesn't secure you a good future or even a dignified life. So,
yeah, definitely the job market is something that's always brought up on the show or in conversations among the youth. And it's interesting that you bring up a co-creation, because in line with the UN's high-level meeting this year, the theme was accelerating progress through intergenerational collaboration, which is exactly what the points that you've brought up. And I mean, both of you have also mentioned that youth participation should be more than just attending meetings. It's really about integrating those lived experiences and expertise into policy outcomes, because this is what's going to affect young people. But with all this talk about how young people are invited into conversations but aren't actually involved in actual decision making, from your perspective, Allyzsa, what does meaningful youth participation look like today? Perhaps you could also, if you'd like, what sort of mechanisms do you think can enable this better?
Youth-led, of course, being brought into meetings is a good start. But of course, like I said earlier, it's not only stop at that.
Yeah, moving beyond those
consultations. We should, because for example, I've been on the consultations for National Action Plan for Business and Human Rights. So I'm involved as to voice out problems that is not incorporating enough on young persons and children's issues in terms of environment for those action plans. So it's a good start that we are already like we actually presented to the stakeholders like what we recommend as young persons. We recommend, for example, we actually put out like they say like in the action plan, but also should include children within marginalized communities in terms of environment. So that's what we think of, that's what I thought of when it comes to incorporating youth participations. And also another thing I would say here is I'm actually behind the scene right now working for the ASEAN ICT Forum, and that's a very good start because this ICT Forum is usually like led by the adult, right? And it's a really refreshing perspective to note that they are incorporating youth voices by actually not having us as only participants, but also as the ones that is planning the session. So like we have the opportunity to plan who we want to be on board with and like what questions should be asked that based on our perspective as youth, because we want to hear more voices, like what do they think about youth nowadays also, right? So that's a nice start, and I feel like a lot of this can be done more often, and it should be more distinct. Yeah.
So more youth-led initiatives rather than including youths as just participants. How about you, Aliff? What do you think? How do we bridge that gap between tokenism and real influence?
As I mentioned just now, co-creation can be part of it. I think government needs to also, when it comes to co-creation, that's the approach, right? But when it comes to mindset, the government or whatever agencies, whatever firms needs to change the mindset that if you want to do something for the youth, you have to do it with them. So it's not just doing something for them. For example, Allyzsa mentioned about marginalized communities. People tend to think, oh, we need to do something for them. Why don't you invite them and see? Because that is their lived reality, right? So they can put things into context rather than someone who planned from the eagle's eye. So for example, Allyzsa mentioned youth from the north. I grew up in the north and I entered Lembah Kelang when I was 18 years old. So I do miss certain opportunities that are usually being give out or available at the for the youth at Lembah Kelang. But people tend to think that, they are outside of Lembah Kelang, we need to do something for them. Why don't you do something with them? Go to the north, for example, and then plan out something rather than, oh, here we have something, we did it in Lembah Kelang, here you go and do it in Kedah, in Perlis. I don't think that's the right approach if you want youth to lead initiatives, youth to be more participative in whatever initiative there is.
It needs to be localized and to not assume that things that may work in Lembah Kelang, the Klang Valley, can apply to East
I think
Asia,
that's the issue of one size fits all. People tend to think, oh, this is applicable at this place, so it must be applicable at that place. A lot of problems arise from that mindset. Our solutions to poverty, for example, we try to have a blanket solution for everything, which is not always the case.
To add on, right, you say like participating youth from like the marginalized communities itself, right? A good example for this is like I've been to the ASEAN Children and Youth Climate Summit in Langkawi back in the 1st of September, and we can clearly see a very good representations from youth all over Malaysia. Like I'm representing the north, there's also people representing Sabah and Sarawak, and also the people that is representing and also drafting the main points for the declarations that is representing Malaysia is also from the Sabah. So I feel like it's a very good start in terms of this, and we can also always step up this game to move forward.
Yep, I think that program in Langkawi really shows that it is possible for us to be able to engage youth throughout the entire country, every state, for them to have one united voice together. But I'm curious though, because we see clearly youth are leading the advocacy on climate, democracy and human rights, but burnout and disillusionment is also something that's very real, especially when you are faced with so much bad news and perhaps this certain mindset that youth voices may not still matter. How do you think we can keep young people engaged for the long run, Allyzsa?
I think first and foremost is to always create a safe space for us, because we do not want to invite any negative feelings when we're doing the things that we're passionate of, because it's a good thing that there's a lot of youth that is passionate enough to start a movement, right? But then it's always going to be accompanied by negative talks by someone that thinks that, oh, we are not worth it, we cannot do this because we're young.
We need to be taken seriously.
Yes, because we experience the lived experiences, and the fact that the adults that have a childhood, right, they grew up in a different time settings than us, so they may not have the handphones, like the modern handphones now, but we do. So how do we incorporate that experiences from the eyes of children of us into the room? And I feel like what the number one thing is to always like not put negative feelings out there, and also to always have a structured like mindset that also like youth is not just mere participants. Like we are not just someone who sits and like be quiet just to be there. Like youth are there to like co-create, to draft. Oh, if you write down we recommend, we also want to write down we recommend.
Yeah, definitely, because approaches that perhaps were good and applied to time decades ago may not be relevant today because the world is changing so rapidly. Aliff, how about you?
Burns out among youth are a real problem. I think one thing we need to factor in is how a lot of systemic barriers are being put forth when you try to bring about changes. So, for example, based on my experience when I was a student before, we try to engage with the area of intellectual activism. We try to bring critical discourses, but of course, universities or management sometimes see this as this is against the norm. So they put up systemic barriers. I mean, they might not say don't do this, but they might put up systemic barriers. For example, there are issues with booking venue, for example, or even bringing guests, or these guests are not approved. So these are systemic barriers. I mean, that is a small example that I just brought up, but there are a lot of other systemic barriers. For example, digital divide among the youth. A lot of activism now must incorporate social media. So, I mean, it is very different from the activism of maybe pre-2015.
Yeah.
A lot of activism now must revolve around whether you are able to do videos on TikTok or able to write out on Twitter, on X. But digital divide among the youth do put some gaps when it comes to bringing the youth together. So those who usually are privileged enough to be digitally literate, they can perform better when it comes to activism, but they cannot afford to bringing their peers from the marginalized communities who are usually have a problem with digital literacy and everything. So their efforts are sometimes becoming echo chambers because it's not that they cannot put their words out, they cannot bring the support with them. So there is a problem with youth activism, the problem with burnouts in youth activism. Sometimes political fatigueness can also be an issue. People are tired of seeing politics as a mere sensational news. People wanted to see politics as, oh, we do policies, we bring about changes, here's our economic issues, how can you... But people love to see, I mean, of course, we all love some good tea, some good gossip, but when it comes to politics, we need to take it seriously, because if it's just political gossip all around, as what we take as political news, political fatigueness can arise from that.
Yep. And I think what you're saying, I mean, Allyzsa is nodding, but also this is something we're seeing across the globe, right? With Gen Z protests in Nepal, uprisings in France. People are tired. They want to see changes in politics, in the government that is leading their country. Malaysia, though, has lowered the youth age limit to 30. Aliff, I'm curious, do you think this would help focus a little bit more on policy on younger voices, or how do you think this change might impact youth engagement and representation?
Of course, there are pros and cons when it comes to lowering youth age. I'm pro towards it because I see that it sharpen our focus to, you know, a very specific group. Of course, the older youth might have some say about it, we do see responses from youth council and everything, which are valid. But I think we need to there are no one size fits all solution. So for the younger youth and the older youth, both are in youth category, but they do need different approaches. Both might come from a different generation. So when it comes to 30 and below, they might have certain needs that the 30 and above youth might not even consider as a problem or as a need. So it's not that we are excluding more people, it's that we are including more people in a very specific group, so we can have a more specific solution, more specific focus. But for those who are deemed excluded in some sense, we can have a different kind of initiative. It's not that we leave them behind, no. It's just that we are putting them in an area that we know their needs, the initiative that they can use is a bit more different than the younger youth.
So not leaving behind any of that co-creation and intergenerational collaboration, but just focusing a little bit more on a specific age group. We've had a lot of talk now about the progress and the changes we want to see. Budget 2026 is coming up and will be tabled in Parliament soon. What are some items for the both of you? What are some items that you wish to see being brought up in Budget 2026, especially for young people? Allyzsa, shall we start with you?
Yes. Firstly, I would say funding, because youth movements, we know that there's a lot of youth movements, right? But then youth have great ideas, but we're always stuck in the funding stage. Like, we cannot go far and beyond because there's some consequences that leads to us like not having enough money, not having enough funding to, for example, make a movement, because making a movement also involves some kind of monetary contributions, right? So I feel like this is really needed when it comes to, like, you said you want youth to participate, then can you help fund us too, because like similar to the adults, right? We also need like money to make something to move. So I would say, like, and also making sure that focus the funding to also like climate issues, like climate adaptation issue, because this has also been like a very increasing problem, because we can see that in terms of financing for like the climate regions, right? This it's not enough. It's often is underdeveloped. So I feel like this is the #1 thing that we should think of about. And also I'd say, like, focus on making sure that skills are integrated in all of the youth, and making sure that you are coming into us, vice versa. We go to you, you go to us, in terms of incorporating some knowledge that is needed when we're growing up, right? Because I feel like going into for example, going into the orang asli kampung to teach them is needed also. So I feel like a movement that can fund us, and also that incorporates us in all of the problems and consequences.
Because at the end of the day, we're all just working together to try and create a just and sustainable future for the country.
Exactly.
Right? Aliff, what's on your Budget 2026 wish list?
Yeah, I agree with Allyzsa on funding. It creates opportunities. But to some extent, when it comes to opportunities, not many people can access these opportunities. So it's a problem of capabilities. Do we enhance the capability in a very amartya sense? That how do these youth capable enough to utilize those opportunities? So, for example, we can provide funding. A lot of initiatives can be done with those fundings, but are the youth capable enough? For example, I mean, we might exclude certain people if their capabilities are not up to par to receive these opportunities. So I wanted to see how Budget 2026 can actually resolve the issue of systemic barriers. One thing, maybe 1 or 2 things that I want to focus on is on job market. For example, we mentioned about precariats just now. So opportunities are all around, especially when we say about job market in Lembah Kelang. It is all around, but there might be issues when it comes to this job security, social security of this job, that do the youth wanted to is it a dignified wish? Is it a dignified life to take up this job? So that's one issue.
And there's different priorities now, like work-life balance,
Yeah.
mental health.
Yeah. And another thing that I think budget 2026 needs to focus on is on education. So there is an issue of legacy quota or alumni quota when it comes to MRSM or SBP. These schools should be the ladder for people to go upward in social mobility. A lot of people from previous generation got out from poverty because of these opportunities being laid out for them. However, these days there are issues with legacy admission or alumni quota that hinders youth from underprivileged background to move socially upward. I mean, there are opportunities, right? But are they capable enough to take that? So the problem with education, we need to also fund the underfunded school. So because people from, for example, people who grew up in a PPR in Lembah Kelang, and people who grew up in a big mansion somewhere in Damansara, they might go to the same school, but when it comes to certain capabilities, some might have privilege for tuition, extra tuition, privilege for books, privilege for a conducive environment to study, which enhance their capabilities, which can make them go to a better school when it comes to secondary schools. So government should focus on how to resolve the systemic barriers. Again, as I mentioned in the earlier part, we have widening our access, but why do our inequalities are getting deeper these days? Because we provide opportunities all around, but we don't empower the students, empower the youth enough for them to grab these opportunities and then move to a better place in their life.
Also all about prioritizing the well-being of future generations, right? Thank you so much to both of you for sharing your insights today and your candid views on the show. I've been speaking to Allyzsa Zahril from UNICEF's Young Persons Advisory Group, as well as Aliff Naif Muhammad Nizam from the Peace Foundation. This has been It's About Youth with me, Faye Kwan. Thank you for watching and good night.